I spent a while in prison when I was 13. Now you're probably wondering, who did she kill? What did she do? How did she end up in prison in the first place? For 120 days, I was locked up, traumatised, watched at every single breath, move, and tear. The day I was admitted into the hospital for anorexia was the start of a never-ending spiral of pain. It has taken me 3 entire years to admit that I am a survivor of anorexia, and that trauma that I experienced whilst in the mental health system is permanently attached to my brain. Growing up, I was always the quiet, anxious child, the one who thought of everyone except for herself. At the age of 13, I zoned into all my insecurities, wondering why I could not be beautiful too. I was diagnosed with anorexia after losing 15% of my body weight in 6 weeks. That's the same amount of weight as if I was skinned alive. My body was constantly covered in jumpers and pants, trying to cover up my frail body. My eyes spiraled into darkness as soon as I sat up. My heartbeat slowed to 38 beats per minute. With the average heart rate for a 13-year-old being 75, my condition had slashed that number right in half. My 3rd admission to hospital absolutely traumatised me. My frail body was sat up in an emergency room bed as nurses barged in, shoving tubes down my nose and down my throat into my stomach. The monitors screamed in disbelief of what they saw of my body. The psychiatrist had me on every single medication known to man. I was taking 21 tablets a day and 6 different medications altogether. I was constantly in a state of moving out of consciousness, staring at the ceiling. One day, the nurses overdosed me 5 times the amount I was supposed to receive. As I sat there with my eyes spiraling into darkness, all I could hear was the screams of my mother pleading to know what was wrong with me. Days turned into weeks, turned into 2 months, as the medication constantly piled on. My brain in a state of constant fog. But the one thing that I will always remember was the frail and skeleton-like children that were dragged across the halls by security guards and their knuckles turning completely pale. For weeks, I attempted to take my life multiple times. I stole the nurse's scissors, slashing my arms open, because in my mind, there was a better life waiting for me on the other side, rather than the hell that the mental health system had brought me. Whilst I was in this treatment, I was told by medical professionals that 60% of people with eating disorders recover through family therapy and constant medical check-ins. When I asked, what happens to the other 40%? What if I am not part of that statistic? I received no response, their eyes staring at me blankly. I was not part of the 60%. I was part of the 40 who required an alternate solution, one that provided me with facts rather than sympathy. There are infinite ways to alleviate suffering. However, dosing a child up on medication, dragging them down the holes, and shoving tubes down their throat against their will is not a solution. As I reflect on my story, it always daunts me that other children and other members of society are possibly experiencing the exact same thing. The turning point of my story was when my family realised that the clinic was no good, and they provided me with all the support that I needed to stand here with you today. The mental health system, especially the eating disorder clinic, focuses wholly on the medical conditions of the disorder. How much do you weigh? what is your arm circumference? They tend to miss the idea that eating disorders are a mental health condition. Physical symptoms are an effect of the condition. I was provided with real motivation from my parents. The realization that I would have a life once I become stable. I would be able to go to the gym. I would be able to have friends. I would be able to go to school full time. But most importantly, they promised me that I would never have to step foot in that clinic ever again. To help myself recover from the amount of medication that was forced upon me, I was put into the psychiatric ward. Despite abuse from staff to my parents, I left and I've never looked back. Rather than moulding my brain into a one-size-fits-all system that doesn't really work, has helped me in my recovery journey. Whilst my eating disorder was forcing me into smaller sizes, my brain was being constantly squashed into the box of the eating disorder clinic. The motivation of the eating disorder clinic was to stay alive. However, death did not scare me at that moment. Although, through this journey, my eating disorder did get the best of me sometimes. There was a lot of food thrown across the kitchen. There was a lot of yelling and a lot of trust required. However, recovery is not linear. It takes turns, it dives down, it leaps up. However, if we continue to be surrounded by a support system, we will all continue to climb towards positivity. The mental health system merely represents a system. It is a one-size-fits-all way of dealing with problems. With my recovery, I was provided with proper, reinforced motivation and support, following a method that works uniquely for me. Not what is convenient for a doctor or a therapist, or what is cheapest for a public system. I still remember the doctors and nurses that watched over me, my hands strangling my neck, my arms sliced open. My parents were always refused the right to express their concern over what was happening to me. I only stand here today because of them. Not because of what I have lost, but because of what I have gained. I only stand here with my 2 feet on this stage because of the support system I had around me that would not let me go to heaven. To my parents, I owe this moment to you. You were the support system that surrounded me in times of need. But what happens to all those people that don't have a support system? Who's going to help them pick up the pieces when they are broken? If the mental health system continues to run the way it is, there will be a constant flow of angels who fly to heaven. Thank you.